This is an accordion.
It looks heavy.
It is, because I get older and it gets heavier.
But there are smaller ones.
They're smaller ones, but like everything else, they don't sound quite the same. And but anyhow, I'm Paul Ramunni. That's my lovely wife, Marcia, over there. She's, you know, behind every meatball of a guy, there's a successful woman. And she is. So before I start yakking, I'm going to make music, all right? And the first place we're going to go is, I'm going to take you to Italy. This is the cheapest trip you'll ever make. All right? The accordion is rather an unusual instrument because it carries in it, in the box, on board, three things that it does. It gives you melody, just what you heard. It gives you accompaniment on the left side. And it also gives you expression in the form of the bellows. Because depending upon how much pressure or strength I put into the bellow movement will determine how you express the song. That's what they call, not Alzheimer's, but sometimers. You don't know why. Amazing. Amazing. All right, sort of a sitting ovation. All right. All right, here's how it happened. I grew up on Long Island. I'll admit it publicly. And my mother came to me one day when I was 10 years old. The woman traumatized me that day, because she said to me, Italian family, your father and I want you to learn how to play the accordion. And I remember saying to Mom, anything but that. No, because back in 1958-ish, the accordion was losing its coolness. Elvis was up running guitars, and the Beatles were starting to, get ready to come across. And the accordion was kind of like going to sleep, going away. Put it in the closet. But for her sake, I did it. But I haunted the woman for about a month. I said, Mom, why are you doing this to me? And she looked at me and said, finally, because it's good, it's clean, and it's wholesome. Now, those 3 words to a 10-year-old was, that was nothing. So I went along with it, but son of a gun, she nailed it, because when you think about what can you use those 3 words to describe today, there isn't a lot in our world that is good, clean, and wholesome. And it stuck to the accordion. And the accordion kind of receded, but now we're seeing it reemerge. And interestingly, I've got folks that come into our museum, especially children, little kids, teenagers, and they look around and they say, "What are these things?" And I say, "They're accordions." They say, "Where did they come from?" Because they have no sense of history. And so the accordion, I could tell them, oh, they were all invented 20 years ago. They'd believe me. But they stand there with their cell phones and they say something like, "This is really cool. What would it take to play one?" Because they are challenged by, I think they're getting tired of being fed streaming. It just keeps giving it to you. The thought that I could pick up something and quickly learn how to play it and make sounds is intriguing to them. So we're seeing more and more young people come and do that. Interesting, huh? So it happened then. All right, so I got to be 17-ish, and I was going off to college, Fairfield University, and the accordion I was playing went in the closet. And it stayed there for 42 years. Fast forward to 2008, and what happened? We went on vacation in Vermont, me and Marcia and I, and we were in the woods. There weren't even any cows near us. There were nothing. And I woke up in the middle of the week, and I had this urge to play again. We don't know where it came from. We still don't know. And I made one phone call, and the guy told me who to call. I called this gentleman 2 towns over. He had 100 of them. So we went into his renovated garage. They're all sitting here, and he said, "Come on, come on, come on. Pick one. You're gonna..." So I picked one. It took me 3 hours. But in the middle of the floor, you folks know what, I don't have one here, little concertinas? Yeah. There were a pile of them, 12, 15 of them, but they were ancient. They were rusted, parts were falling off of them, gray, brown, and they were in a pile. And I kept stepping over them, and I finally said, "Cliff, why are these like this?" And he said, they just came in from a very serious collector. He said they came from the Nazi prison camps.
Wow.
Now, I was looking for the equipment, and this guy went and hit me over the head with, "What?" And I didn't realize that, at that point, this is what the guards would leave the people with, to entertain themselves. And then they would use it as propaganda, because, look, everybody's playing instruments. And so that story went in the back of my head, and I bought an accordion, and then we started finding them in tag sales and places where other collectors had them. And but more stories started coming from not every, but a lot of the accordions I was collecting had stories attached to them. And that's how the book came out. Because almost 2 years ago, a gentleman came up, Tony Lavello. He was a world-class accordion player. His final presentation to the public was made at our house before he died, a couple, 3 months later. But before he left, he looked at me square in the eye, and he says, "Do the book." And I said, "Okay." I gotta do the book. And so out came the book, and there's a dedication to Tony in the back there. And people have been purchasing it. It's on Amazon. And that has spurred even more stories. People are coming. Incredible stories, crazy stories. But these things were used in places that you wouldn't have expected to see them, you know? So as we go through this, we'll tell you more stories. Any more questions?
Paul?
Yes, sir.
Tell us about your instrument, the one you actually used there.
This one here, it was built in 1993 by the Giuseppe Verdi company in Italy, and it was their centennial model because that was celebrating their 100 years of business. They started in 1893, so this thing was built as a special model, and it's what we call a professional accordion. It's got all the bells and whistles, and the more switches on the right-hand side and left, the more valuable. There's more. It's souped up, and it's got power, and it makes a lot of noise. But it changes the sound. See, I can get all the reeds working by pushing the center one master, and I can change it. And there's a mute. See how it works? And those sounds you mate with the right moment in the music, and it comes out the way you want it to.
So you don't have to ever tune it.
Huh?
You don't ever.
No, these things.
But the reeds. they
Yeah,
need to be
this thing is
replaced like
extremely hardy,
that?
unless you leave them in an attic.
Yeah. Dry.
Horrible, and basement even worse, because the mold gets it. But what's inside is incredible. There's wooden blocks, and they're kind of A-shaped, and there's little metal reeds that sit on there, and they glue them in with beeswax. They've been doing that for 200 years. They're still doing it because they don't have any other component or any other compound that would be an improvement over it. So when a reed goes bad, you just go in with an iron and melt it, put the new one in and re-wax it, so that works. But there's leathers in there also that block the air ports, and depending on which one you press, they work and operate. It's very clever, and a lot of it's non-electronic.
Oh, mechanical.
Yeah, it's just mechanical, and it works consistently well. I have a couple of surprises for you today. One of them is that black baby over there called Roland. That's the latest iteration. They couldn't leave it alone. It's a digital accordion.
Oh, no.
You need to open the windows and start crawling out when I pull that out for you. There's another surprise up there that I'll get to presently, but okay, you're going to ask, where's the polka?
Polka.
The polka. Polka became 1844 in France. They went nuts. Somebody invented polka. They got out on the street and started playing it, and the whole country went crazy. It made its way in 1850 to England, and then England, with people coming over, started getting into this country, and it went across the prairies, and they had little box accordions in the wagons, the covered wagons. We've even heard a story or two about, it's anecdotal of course, I can't prove it, but what happened when the Indians would attack a wagon train and wipe out everybody, they go through all the clothing and throw it away, and they'd find this little button box. And somebody would get it, and that would make him an important person just by pushing the buttons and working, because they never heard the sound. It was amazing. And so, polka. Here we go, I think. think the accordion was something that came along at a time when people wanted music desperately. Back in the late 1700s, there was no music unless somebody had a flute or a violin. Violins fiddles were very sensitive, and you had to know how to play that thing. Very few people did. So as a consequence, it was quiet. In your house, it was quiet. And the accordion was built, the design of it was meant to produce fun for people. Because life wasn't a lot of fun back then. And, you know, work, 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 you come home, you eat, go to bed, get up, work, work, you know, just keep going. So they wanted something to make life, something to look forward to.
Would you say that it was more of a working class instrument?
Yes, definitely. It was made for the working man and woman. It was not made for the king, queen, the elite. As a matter of fact, you wouldn't be caught dead playing one of these if you were in that class. Interesting. 1953, the movie version of Titanic. I just happened to catch it a few weeks ago. And they were going out from New York, I guess it was, and there were all the different classes on the ship. So, first night out, they're going to have the big ball in the upper class ballroom. Everybody's dressed in tux, and the captain, everybody, and there's an orchestra doing this, and everybody's prim and proper. And then they go downstairs into the hull, into the lower regions, and you see everybody whooping it up, having a heck of a good time. And who's making the music? Two guys on two button accordions. And they had bottles on, everybody was dancing. I said, you know, which party do I want to be involved in? They were having fun down there. So this thing was meant to make fun, to make happiness for folks. As a matter of fact, where did it go? It's over here. I'm in a library, so I should be able to tell you about this. Carl Sandburg, excuse me, noted American poet. He wrote this. I asked the professors who teach the meaning of life to tell me what is happiness. And I went to famous executives who bossed the work of thousands of men. They all shook their heads and gave me a smile as though I was trying to fool with them. And then one Sunday afternoon, I wandered out along the Des Plaines River, and I saw a crowd of Hungarians under the trees with their women and children, and a keg of beer, and an accordion. And when I read that, I tripped over it somewhere, I read it, I said, that's what it is. Now, the beer helped, but, you know, beer alone, the music drew out the reaction, and it got people together. And so what we're doing here right now is so important, because we're into this too much, way too much, and we all know that now. But getting folks together, physically together, and then learning from each other, and how to act and what have you, it's valuable. So this still has a tremendous value. And the other thing it does, music, and especially fun music, is like a solvent. They call it a solvent. It breaks down the hard barriers between people. We got a few of those today. And when you get in a place, we're not worried about politics, religion, the things that separate us. The music makes us want to, you know, get up and dance. And you just grab anybody and you go. And that's healthy. We need more of that. You know? So, okay, I don't know if you saw this already, but you got to tell me if you remember where this song came from.
Small C.
We have over here what we call a Tans bar. This is the late 1800s. What happened was they were desperate for music. And the piano was out, even the player piano was out. And what they did is they came up with a family of instruments called organettes. So you've got your music boxes, you've got the, remember the organ grinder with the monkey, the hurdy-gurdy, things that you didn't have to know how to play, you just had to crank it. Okay? And they came up, the Germans came up with what we call a Tans bar, T-A-N-Z-B-A-R. And it means dancing bear. You guys remember in the circuses they had bears? So, I don't know, they gave it that name. So, what it is, it's not really an accordion because these buttons are all dummies. They're fixed. But what happens is, you open up this door, it's a player accordion.
Oh, I love it.
That's cool.
So, what happens is if I've got it working, you know, you got to crank it and play it. So, I'll tell you the story, but let me make some music if I can. So, you get your hands in here.
We might end up having a bear, a local bear.
Yeah, come through the door. Cranking it.
So you just have to keep the bellows going and the
Yeah.
crank.
And the crank advances the roll. And the roll has, as you can see, holes on it, and there's pins behind it, and as it moves the pins, it opens the valves of the appropriate notes. Now, this is 1890.
That is amazing.
I go crazy when people say 1800s. What did people know? They were dumb. And they weren't. They were very smart. They had to put this thing together without electricity, without a manual. Somebody, German engineering, it was amazing.
So did this come after player piano? It's the same idea as a player
Yeah,
piano.
yeah.
Which came first? At the
I
same
think
time.
probably the player piano, because they
Okay.
put more effort into it.
Right, and then.
So what happened was a lady came to our showroom and she brought this with her. And she looked at me and said, my great-grandfather used to service these things down in Fort Myers for Edison, Thomas Edison. He had a collection of these things.
Wow.
And he would go down there and refurbish, and so he gave this one to her before he passed. And she said, I really need to get rid of it. She said, it doesn't work. And I went, huh? And he says, I gotta have $1,000 for it. And I went, I want that.
And it doesn't work.
And it doesn't work. So I said, well, why don't we take the tour? So I took her on the tour of the museum, and I told her what we were doing. And she came back into the room, sat down, she looked at me and said, you know what? I'm going to give this to you. But you're going to have to promise me something. Oh boy. I said, what? She said, if you ever get it to work, you've got to let people know where it came from, who did it, what it is, what happens, how it all works. And I said, deal. So out they went. Now I'm sitting on my chair like this thing's on the table. And who's going to fix this kind of thing? You know, I mean, there's nobody on the planet that knows how these things work. Well, probably is, but I'll never find him or her. So I just said, I could use some help here. And I still don't know what I did. I opened it up, started fooling around with some of the levers, and found a couple of things I thought were not quite right. Put her back together, works.
Oh my gosh.
Hey.
That's a great
It
story.
was meant to be. But again, when you analyze it and look back and see what caused it, what made this thing happen, you know, people were, gosh, they wanted music. Like it's a part of our, we take it for granted because it's all over the place today. But a neat instrument, yes dear.
Does it have more than one roll, or is
Oh,
it
yeah.
just the?
Yeah, I've got
Oh.
several roles.
No
Oh,
kidding.
wow.
The songs are so old, I don't know what they are. I put them in, I go, what's that song? So I picked the Blue Danube, I have the Blue Danube, but I've been running that for a while now, and it's, the paper is tearing. There's one man alive in Missouri that claims he could make more rolls. And I keep calling him, I said, did you make them yet? He goes, no, I gotta get to it, I gotta get to it. And I'm gonna go down there, knock him on the head, and say, do it.
That is.
Barbara, this is Barbara, circa 1942. And Barbara was born in 1923, out in the Midwest. And she was one of these people that must have been born with an accordion in her hands. But she immediately took to the accordion as a young girl and just took off with it. And she was playing second-hand, third-hand accordions forever. And it was 1934 when she went to her dad. This was the Great Depression. He was making $10 a week. And she said, Pop, I need a real accordion. And the family sent me all this information. And he said, how much? She said, well, it's going to have to be Italian. It's going to have to come from Italy. It's made by Ciuceroli in Castelfidardo. And that's what that thing is. Top of the line at that date, $750.
Wow.
Now, you could have bought a small house for that much,
Yeah.
a really nice car. And the father melted. And he said, now, how are we going to do it? Well, you know how they did things back then. Small town, they got everybody involved. Because Barbara would play for a lot of socials and gigs and what have you. So they started collecting the money. And they did it. Within a year, they came up with $750. They ordered the accordion, and it came. Now, it's an incredible accordion. At the time, it has features on it that were ahead of its time. Barbara took it, and that's what's in the picture here, and she played it everywhere. And what happened was, 1942 came along, and Barbara was 19. Now, Barbara was a very headstrong lady, and she knew what she was all about. And she just announced to the family at that time, I'm leaving home, I'm going to Europe with my accordion, I'm joining the USO,
Cool.
remember the USO? And I'm going to play for the troops.
Of course.
And parents, everybody went crazy. You're a single girl, you can't do that, you can't just go here, what are you doing? And so she went, and she took the accordion with her, of course. And what happened is, I happened to find this thing on eBay, and so they wanted $5,000 for it. Yeah, well, it wasn't worth $5,000, but because of the backstory and everything, and again, I told her what we were doing with the museum and
Who had it at the time?
the family.
Oh, the family.
It was her son.
Wow.
And she passed away in 2008, 7, something like that. I missed her. But I told them what we were doing, and the 5,000 became 500. And so, but here we go. They said, but if you're going to go anywhere with this thing, you're going to tell everybody what happened. So I said, tell me what happened. So they sent me a whole box of clippings and background on this woman. I spent, I don't know how many evenings going through all the clippings. When I got done, I felt like she was in the room. I felt like she was going to come through the door. I knew her. I knew her. So what happened to Barbara? She was in for a shock. She got over there with this accordion, and they put her last in her first entertainment time. And she told the family, she was nervous. They put her out on the stage, and in front of her was a sea of gray. All the soldiers, 5, 10, 15,000 men at a time. They never would put more than that in one location because of the nature of them, the war and the risk. And she said, never seen so many gray people at one time. And she said behind them was all the troop transports, the trucks. Why? Because when she got done playing, they were going to put the guys on the trucks immediately. All their gear, equipment were on those trucks, and they were going back to the front line. And that's when she realized she was playing for soon-to-be dead people, because we were losing 40–50% casualties. And she's, what am I doing here? I'm playing songs from America and trying to make people, oh, it's cute, coffee house, gigging. These guys are going to die. And it bothered her enormously, and she couldn't do anything about it the first time out. And on top of that, it wasn't just American troops. Even at that point, it was the Allies. So you had Brits, you had Irish, you had Scots, you had Canadians, you had people from all over the world. So American songs, they weren't what they were used to. Well, as things have it, how things happen, in 1938, Irving Berlin wrote a song, God Bless America. Kate Smith, big old Kate Smith, she got a hold of that song and popularized it. And Barbara said, that's the final song, gotta play that. And she wanted to inspire these people to go back and do it, even though it might cost you your life, limbs, whatever. And it worked. She played for over 300,000 troops. Now, I always end with this because it's important. It happened. All right? So if you feel the urge to stand or sing or run around, feel free. This is for you.